In this video, you're going to learn about the knowledge that let kings hold power and dominion over people for thousands of years. The same knowledge that lifted shepherds onto thrones and made a few men so steady that the world seemed to arrange itself around them. They never carved it onto their palace walls, and they handed it down only to the ones who would rule after them, because a thing this useful was the last thing they wanted in common hands. And the part they never said out loud, the part that should have been shouted from every rooftop, is that it was never theirs to begin with. It was always yours. So lie back and let the pillow take the weight of your head. You do not have to hold on to any of this right now, and you do not have to believe a word of it yet. You only have to listen and let it move through you the way water moves through sand. There is a single sentence underneath everything in this video, one short line that once put shepherds on thrones. You do not need to catch it with your thinking mind, and you do not need to hold on to it. It runs quietly under every story you're about to hear, and the deeper part of you, the part that was steering your life long before your thoughts ever caught up, will take it in on its own, the way you take in a song you never sat down to learn. Before we go further, there is something honest I owe you, because it is the one thing that will keep you from giving up too soon. Part of you is going to fight what you hear in this video. Somewhere in the next hour, a voice will rise up in you and tell you that this is foolish, that the world does not work this way, that this is simply not who you are. That voice is not trying to hurt you. It is the part of you that has spent years guarding the old shape of your life, and it guards that shape because it is the only one it has ever known how to keep you safe inside. So when it speaks, you do not have to argue with it, and you do not have to win. You only have to notice it, the way you would notice a guard walk slowly past a locked door and let the words keep coming. And if it helps the doubting part of you to hear it, the people in white coats found the same thing the old kings knew. A scientist named Lisa Feldman Barrett spent her life studying how the brain actually works, and she found that the brain does not sit and wait for the world and then react to it. The brain predicts. It builds the experience first, and the world catches up a moment later. Think of the way your mouth begins to water before the food has even reached you, how the readiness arrives ahead of the meal. Your brain is always living half a step in front of the world, quietly shaping what comes. So the version of you that already lives as though the thing is yours is not fooling itself. It is laying down the very prediction the rest of your life will move to meet. And this is why you come back to this video more than once. The mind does not change because someone told it something true one time, and it does not change by force. It changes the way a path forms across a field by being walked the same way again and again until one morning the walking happens on its own, and the part of you that was braced finally loosens and lets the idea come in and sit down. The first of these kings ruled about 2,600 years ago in the land we now call Iran, and his story begins 2 generations before him with his grandfather, an old king who had everything you were taught to want and still could not sleep at night. He had the throne and the armies and more rooms in his palace than he had ever bothered to walk into, and none of it could quiet him because the same dream kept coming back and would not leave him alone. In the dream, a child was born into his family, and that child grew until he covered the whole earth. So the king asked his wise men what it meant, and they told him this child would take everything he had. You know that fear, even if you have never gone near a throne. It is the fear that whatever you have built can be taken from you, and that somewhere out there is the person or the loss that will take it. The old king felt it, and he let it make his choices for him. When his daughter gave birth to a son, the old king gave the baby to the servant he trusted most, and he told him to carry the child up into the mountains and leave him there to die. So the servant climbed, with the baby in his arms. But somewhere on the cold slope he found that he could not do it, so instead he carried the child to a shepherd and his wife who lived far from the palace, and they took the boy in and raised him as their own. Stay with what just happened, because the whole secret of this video is hidden inside it. The most powerful man alive reached out to crush one infant, and he reached with everything he had, with servants and soldiers and the full weight of a throne. And it was the reaching itself that set the dream in motion. His grip did not protect him. It carried out the very thing he feared. The boy grew up in the shepherd's house, with dirt under his nails, and for years he had no idea that a crown had ever been spoken of over his cradle. The woman who nursed him was the shepherd's wife, and her name, in the old language of that country, was close to the word for dog. Years later, when the truth came out and people wanted the story to sound touched by the gods, they took her name and turned it into a tale that the lost prince had been suckled by a wild dog on the mountainside. But there was no miracle in it. There was only a poor woman with the name that meant dog, feeding a child who was not hers, and loving him as if he were. And here is the part the old storytellers kept coming back to. Long before anyone told the boy a word about his blood, he already carried himself like someone the world would one day have to answer to. There was a day, when he was about 10 years old, that the village children were playing a game of kings, and they elected him to be the king of the game. He took it seriously. He gave the other children their roles, some as his guards, and some as his messengers, and when the son of a local nobleman refused to obey one of his orders, the boy did not whine, and he did not back down. He had the other children seize him, and he had him whipped for disobeying his king. The nobleman's son ran home insulted, and his father carried the complaint all the way up to the old king himself, furious that a mere shepherd's boy had dared to lay hands on the son of a man of rank. So the old king sent for the boy, and when the child was brought before the throne, and stood there without flinching, and answered for what he had done plainly and without fear, something in the way he held himself, and something in his face, made the old king go cold. He was looking at his own blood. The boy he had ordered killed had been standing in a poor man's clothes the whole time, being exactly what the dream had promised. A king, years before anyone had agreed to call him one. Let that settle into you as you lie there. He did not become a king and then start to feel like one. He felt like one first, quietly, inside a poor man's house, and slowly the outside of his life rearranged itself to match the inside. He lived as the thing he already was, and the crown came looking for him. The rest is almost a formality. The child raised in the dirt had already become a man other men followed without being told to, so he rose and he took the throne his grandfather had spent a lifetime trying to keep from him, and he kept going until he ruled the largest empire the world had yet seen, from the edge of Greece to the edge of India. You may already know the name the histories gave him. They called him Cyrus the Great. So breathe out and let your shoulders come down, because the lesson under all of it is softer than the story sounds. Cyrus didn't win because he wanted the throne more than the others did. Every man near that throne wanted it, and most of them wanted it badly. He won because his grandfather chased the future from fear, clutching at it, sure it could be torn away, while the boy moved through the world from a quiet certainty that he already belonged to something larger than any throne. One of them squeezed and lost what was in his hand. The other held nothing, and everything came to him. And you're lying here with far more than that shepherd's son was ever given, and the same quiet law is in the room with you. The love you keep reaching for, and the money, and the proof that your life will finally matter, all step back from you for the same reason the dream stepped back from the old king. You reach for them from the part of you that is sure they are not yet yours. There is a reason that reaching pushes things away, a small and almost physical reason that an old teacher worked out a long time ago, and we will come to it. For now, let the story rest. A baby left on a mountain, and a boy who was already a king before a single person agreed to call him one. The second king lived much later, about 700 years ago on the other side of the world in West Africa. His name was Mansa Musa, and he ruled an empire called Mali, a land so heavy with gold that gold there was almost ordinary. No one has ever been able to count what he was worth. Every person who tried ran out of numbers and gave up, and to this day the historians simply call him the richest man who ever lived. But the thing the world remembered about him was never the size of the treasure. It was what he did with it. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa decided to make the long pilgrimage to Mecca, thousands of miles across the desert, and he did not travel quietly. The procession that left his kingdom was so long that watching it pass was like watching a city get up and walk. There were thousands of people in it, and camels loaded with gold, and everywhere this slow river of people went, the king gave the gold away. He gave it to the poor he met on the road, and he gave it to the towns that fed him. And when he reached Cairo, one of the great cities of the world, he handed out so much gold to so many people so freely that the price of gold in that city fell, and it did not recover for years. One man, simply passing through and opening his hands, changed the worth of gold for a whole region for the better part of a decade. The size of what passed through Cairo that year is hard to hold in your head. The stories say tens of thousands of people walked in that procession, and behind them came a long line of camels, each one carrying sacks of gold dust. He spent and gave so freely in the markets that gold itself lost its value across Egypt and stayed cheap for years. And there is one small detail in the story that tells you everything about the man. On his way home, when he saw what his giving had done to the price of gold, he tried to fix it the only way he knew. He began borrowing gold back from the merchants of Cairo, at a loss to himself, just to lift the price again. He was so far from afraid of running out that he would lose money to undo his own generosity. And the strangest proof of how far his name travelled came about 50 years after he was gone. On the other side of the world in Europe, a map-maker sat down to draw the known world, and when he reached the empty south of his map, he drew a black king seated on a throne, crowned, holding up a single large nugget of gold for anyone to see. That was Mansa Musa, a man so rich that people who had never met him, on a continent he never set foot on, still drew him half a century later as the richest figure on the edge of the world. Now here is where almost everyone hears this story wrong, and the wrong way of hearing it is exactly the way that keeps an ordinary person poor. Most people listen and think, of course he gave it away so easily, he had endless gold, it cost him nothing. But that has it backwards. Feel this in your own body for a moment, while you lie there. Think of the last thing you wanted badly, and watch what your hands do when you picture it. They close. They tighten around the thing before you even have it, because some part of you is sure that if you do not hold on, it will slip away. That closing of the hand is not the posture of a rich man. It is the posture of someone who is afraid there will not be enough. Mansa Musa did the opposite, and he did it without thinking about it, simply because of who he understood himself to be. He let the gold run out through open hands, town after town, mile after mile, because underneath everything he was quietly sure that more was always coming. He was not rich because he held on tightly. He was rich because he never once needed to. The closed hand was the poor man, the open hand was the king. So let your own hands rest open on the bed now, palms up or palms down, however they want to lie. Notice that when you stop gripping, nothing actually falls away. The day does not spill out of you, and the thing you are clutching does not run off the moment you loosen your fingers. It only feels that way from the inside, in the part of you that has never quite believed there is enough. This is the same quiet law you met on the mountain with the shepherd boy, only wearing different clothes. Cyrus carried himself like a king before the crown, and the crown came. Mansa Musa carried himself like a man who could never run dry, and the gold behaved as if he never could. Power came to the one who already felt like power, and wealth came to the one who already felt full, and in both of them the outside of a life slowly bent itself to match the man on the inside. And by now a question may be forming in you, the only question that really matters here. Why would loosening your grip bring a thing closer, when everything you have ever felt tells you to hold on tighter? Why does the reaching push it away, every single time? That is the small, almost physical reason I promised you, and to find it we leave the kings behind. We go to the people who spent their whole lives trying to answer exactly that question, who lived in far apart lands and prayed to different names and never once met each other, and who all came back carrying the same quiet answer. The first of them were a line of old Jewish mystics, and they answered the question almost the way an engineer would, which is part of why their answer has lasted. They started with a single word for everything a person could ever want. They called it light. Not the light you see with your eyes, but the light that is love and safety and meaning and the quiet sense that you are finally enough. Anything that can fill an empty place in you they called light. And then they taught something that sounds impossible the first time you hear it. You cannot take that light directly. If it pours straight into your wanting, it does not fill you. It burns through, and it leaves you emptier than you were before. To show you what they meant, they pointed at something that is most likely in the room with you right now. A light bulb. Think about how a bulb actually works. On one side there is the current that wants to give. On the other side there is the part that wants to receive. And everything in you, hearing that, wants to do the obvious thing, which is to put them straight together. The giving and the wanting, touching so the light can finally come. But you cannot. Anyone who has ever let two bare wires touch knows what happens when the giving and the receiving meet with nothing held between them. There is a spark and a flash, and then the wires go dark and sometimes they melt. The power was real, but it could not be used. They called that the short circuit, and they said it is exactly what happens in a human life. When you try to seize what you want directly, immediately, with your whole grasping hand, you get one bright flash of having it, and then it is gone, and you're reaching again. So what is it that actually makes the bulb shine? It is not the giving, and it is not the wanting. It is the thin thread in the middle, the part that resists. The filament does only one thing. It pushes back. It says not all at once, not directly, not yet. And that pushing back, that refusal to swallow the whole current at once, is the only reason the room ever fills with light. The mystics had a name for every part of this. The quiet refusal you place between your wanting and the world they called the screen. The act of pushing the light back instead of grabbing it they called striking. And the light that comes back to you after you've refused to seize it, the light that finally stays and warms the room, they called the returning light. They even had a name for the whole movement together. They called it union by striking, which is a strange and beautiful idea once it lands in you. You join with the very thing you want by being willing to push away the taking of it now. And if a light bulb feels too small to hold something this large, the same mystics would point you at the most violent power human beings have ever touched, because it runs on the very same rule. Look inside a single atom. There is a part that pulls and a part that pushes, and in the middle there is a quiet thing that holds them apart and keeps the whole atom steady and calm. Take that quiet middle away, break the thing that was holding the opposites in their place, and you do not get a brighter bulb. You get the bomb. The largest force we've ever released came out of the resistance at the centre of things, the part whose only job was to hold back. The held back middle is never the weak part of the system. It is where the real power was sleeping the whole time. And here is the line I want to leave under your pillow, the one that explains both kings at once. The difference between a dim bulb and one that fills a whole room is only this: how much it is willing to resist. The more the thread pushes back, the brighter it burns. The deeper your power to want a thing fully and not snatch at it, the more of it can finally come to live in you and stay. You can watch the same rule in something as ordinary as two people talking. The salesman who walks in needing the sale, gripping for it, pushing, tends to lose it, because the other person feels the grasping and quietly pulls away. But the one who walks in and genuinely sets the wanting down for a moment, who decides to serve the person in front of him instead of seizing the money, often walks out with the sale he was not chasing. He did not give up the wanting. He put a screen in front of it, he refused to grab, and the thing came back to him on its own. That is the returning light, wearing a suit, in a perfectly ordinary room. This is why the grandfather, who could not wait, who grabbed at the future with both hands, was the one who lost it. And it is why the boy, who could live quietly inside a poor man's house for years, became the brightest thing in the empire. It is why Mansa Musa, with his open and unworried hands, held more than any man who ever squeezed a coin. Each of them was a filament. Each of them carried the current of an enormous wanting and refused to burn it out by taking too fast. You already know how to do this, by the way. You've done it 1,000 times without noticing. You lose a name, and the harder you reach for it, the further it hides, and then you give up and turn to something else, and a minute later it floats back to you on its own. You were never handed that name while you were grabbing for it. It came back the moment you released the grabbing without letting go of the wanting. That small, ordinary thing is the entire secret of kings, and it has been quietly living in you your whole life. So let that rest in you. The resistance is not the enemy of what you want. The resistance is the cup that finally lets you hold it. The mystics with the light bulb showed you how it works. The next tradition shows you why it reaches all the way from a king down into you, lying here in the dark. A very long time ago, in the old world of Egypt and Greece, there was a body of teaching that came down under the name of a figure the old writers called the Thrice Great. Its core was said to be pressed onto a single slab of stone the old world called the Emerald Tablet, a small green tablet said to hold the whole secret of how creation works in a handful of short lines. The legends about where it came from are wild, that it was found clutched in the hands of a buried sage, that it was carved before the Great Flood. Set the legends aside, because what matters is the very first line written on it, and it is a line you already heard tonight, as above, so below. Whatever is true in the heavens is true down here in the smallest things, and the same law that moves a king moves the breath going in and out of your chest right now. But there was a second half to that line, said more softly, that most people never learn, as within, so without. What is true inside you becomes true around you. The state you carry on the inside does not stay locked behind your eyes. It leaks out. It quietly shapes what you notice and how you stand when you walk into a room, and the thing under your voice when you ask for what you want, and the world answers the state you are in, not the words you say. Stay with that as your breathing slows. The man who felt like a king on the inside walked into a room one way, and the room answered him one way. The man who felt poor on the inside walked into the same room already braced to be turned away, and he was turned away. There was nothing magic in it. As within, so without. The inside writes the outside in a language too quiet to hear, and the world reads that language perfectly, every time. You have felt this from the other side too. You've walked up to a dog that was frightened, and felt it read your nervousness before you said a single word, and you've walked up to one calm and sure, and felt the animal settle under your hand. People are no different, only quieter about it. Long before anyone has consciously decided what they think of you, some older part of them has already read the state you walked in carrying, and has quietly started to answer it. This is why you can never fix your life only from the outside. You can say all the right words to the person you love, and send the right message, and build the right plan for the money, and still feel the things slip out of your hands, because underneath the words the inside of you was still reaching, still grasping, still quietly saying, I am not enough without this. The world heard the inside. It always hears the inside. So the real work was never to act powerful on the outside. The real work was to become, on the inside, the person who already has the thing, and then to let the outside slowly catch up, the way it caught up to a shepherd boy and to a king with open hands. As within, so without. Let the small muscles around your eyes go loose now. Let your forehead grow heavy. Whatever you are quietly becoming on the inside as you lie here in the dark, the world outside you is already beginning to read it. The third tradition said the same thing, but it said it so boldly that the people who first heard it picked up stones. In one of the Gospels, the Gospel of John, the teacher from Galilee says 5 words that have echoed for 2,000 years. I and the Father are one. To the people standing around him it sounded like the worst thing a man could say, that he was claiming to be the source of everything itself, and they reached for stones to throw at him. But inside the quieter, hidden stream of that tradition, the one that grew up alongside the official church and was rarely spoken out loud, those 5 words were never a boast. They were a door, and it was left open for you. There was another saying, kept in a gospel that never made it into the official book, the Gospel of Thomas, that puts it even more plainly. The kingdom, it says, is inside you, and it is outside you. It is not waiting up in a sky you have to die to reach, and it is not locked inside a building you have to pay to enter. It is inside you, and all around you, and it has been the whole time. And you can see why the men who ran the temple wanted those words buried. If the source is already inside every ordinary person, then no one needs to stand at a gate and sell the way in. A priest who tells you that God is far away, and that only He holds the key, has a great deal of power over you. A teacher who tells you that God is as close as your own breath has just handed that power back to you and walked away. One of those messages builds an institution, and the other quietly dissolves the need for one. So the second message was the one they pushed into the shadows. The hidden teaching said that what you call God was never only far above you, sitting on a throne in some distant sky, keeping score. It said the source was also the ground you are lying on, the thing you were drawn out of, closer to you than your own breath. And to know that, really know it, not as an idea in your head but as a feeling in your body, was to stop being a beggar standing outside the door of your own life. Because a beggar reaches. A beggar pleads for crumbs from a power he believes is outside him and might say no. But a child of the source does not beg from the source. A child simply moves through the house as one who belongs there. Feel the difference while you lie here, because it is the whole thing. When you want something and you do not believe it is already yours by right, you reach for it with the energy of a beggar, and the world treats you the way people treat a beggar. But when you move as someone who was never separate from the source of all of it, you stop reaching, because you cannot reach for what you are already joined to. And that stopping, that quiet end of the reaching, is the open hand of Mansa Musa, and the calm of the boy who would be king. I and the Father are one. Whatever name you give the source, in whatever language you are raised, the teaching behind the door is the same. You were never standing outside the storehouse begging to be let in. You were always already inside it, and the only thing that ever made you feel poor was the reaching. So let that lie on you now the way a heavy blanket lies on you, in the good way, the way that makes you sink another inch into the bed. You do not have to earn your way to the source. You have not been apart from it for 1 second of your life. The fourth tradition came from the far side of the world, from old China, and it said the secret in the gentlest words of all, which is fitting because it learned the secret by watching water. The old Taoist teachers spent their lives watching the way water moves. Water never fights. It never grabs. It never lies awake at night straining toward the sea. And still, given enough time, nothing on earth is more powerful than water. It wears the hardest stone down to sand, and it finds its way into every low and forgotten place, and it always, without a single exception, reaches the ocean, and it does all of that by never once forcing its way there. They had a phrase for the way water lives. They called it wu wei. People often translate it as doing nothing, but that gives you the wrong picture, because it is not laziness, and it is not giving up. Wu wei is doing the thing in front of you completely, and then letting go of your grip on how it has to turn out. It is the farmer who plants the seed, and waters it, and tends it, and then does not stand over it in the dark, pulling at the stem to make it grow faster. The old Taoists told a story about a cook who carved oxen for a king. Where other cooks hacked and forced and wore out a knife every month, this one had used the same blade for 19 years, and it was still as sharp as the day it was ground. The king asked him how that could be. The cook said he had stopped cutting with effort a long time ago. He no longer hacked at the meat. He let his hand follow the natural openings in the body, the spaces that were already there between the joints, and he simply guided the blade through the gaps the animal gave him. He was doing the work fully, with his whole attention. He'd only stopped forcing it. 19 years, one knife, because he moved with the grain of the thing instead of against it. This is the same secret again. In the plainest words it has worn all night. It does not ask you to stop acting. Cyrus acted, and Mansa Musa acted, and the water is always moving. But none of them strained from a place of lack, and none of them stood over the seed at night demanding that it grow. They did the work, and then they loosened their grip on how it had to turn out, and the thing they wanted came to them the way the sea receives a river, quietly and without being begged. So you are allowed to set something down now, not the wanting. Keep the wanting, because the wanting is only your life pointing clearly at what it loves, and that is good. What you set down is the grip, the clenched, anxious, now, now, now. Let it dissolve into the mattress underneath you. The water still reaches the sea. You still arrive at everything that is meant for you. You simply stop drowning on the way there. So here you are, at the end of 2 kings and 4 doors, with one quiet law lying underneath all of them. Become it on the inside, and the outside slowly bends to meet you. Hold the wanting and loosen the grip, and the thing that kept short-circuiting your whole life finally has somewhere to live. Now let me tell you the part the title promised you, and then I will let you sleep. For thousands of years this was kept. Not lost, kept. It lived in temple schools that did not open their doors to the public. It lived in the inner circles of mystics who would only teach it to the ones who had proven they could be trusted with it. It lived in the courts of kings, in the rooms the ordinary people were never shown, handed quietly from the ones who ruled to the ones who would rule after them. In some of those old schools the secret was guarded so tightly that to repeat it to an outsider was punished by death. Men and women went down into dark rooms and swore oaths they were never allowed to break, and what they learned down there was never written where common eyes could find it. Whole libraries that might have held it burned, some by accident and some on purpose. For most of human history, if you were born into an ordinary family, the door to this was not just closed. You were raised to believe there was no door at all, and that people like you were simply meant to carry water for the people who had one. The priests had it, and the magi had it, and the people below them were handed a smaller story instead, a story about luck, and about being born to the wrong family, and about powers far away that you could never hope to touch. And it is true, they kept it from you. For a very long time they kept it. But hear the part that matters more than the theft. It was never theirs to keep. A king cannot own the law the sun obeys. A priest cannot lock away the rule that water lives by. None of them invented any of this. They only noticed it and stayed quiet about it and let you believe it belonged to people like them and not to people like you. The mistake was never that you lacked the secret. The mistake was believing it had an owner. It belongs to you. It belonged to you on every night you lay awake feeling that life was something that happened to other, luckier people. The same law that put a crown on a shepherd's son and let a king give away mountains of gold is in this room with you right now, in the dark, as close as your own breathing. You do not have to storm a single palace to reach it. You only have to stop reaching long enough to feel that it was already quietly yours. So let me leave you where the kings began, which was not with effort, but with letting go. You do not have to change your whole life before morning. You only have to let one short line sink a single layer deeper than it went last night, and you do not even have to say it out loud, or remember it, because the deeper part of you has been listening this whole time. Here it is, the line the kings built their quiet advantage on, the one that has been running underneath every story in this video. Stop reaching, and it comes. That is all of it. Stop reaching, and it comes. Tomorrow the warden of your old self will wake up before you do, and it will tell you that none of this was real, and that you're the same as you have always been, and that you had better get back to gripping and clutching and worrying like before. Let it talk. You do not argue with a guard. You simply come back here tomorrow night and the night after that, and you let these words walk a little further past the gate each time, until one ordinary afternoon you reach for something out of fear, and you feel your own hand quietly open instead, and you remember why. That is how a shepherd became a king. Not in a single night, but one quiet layer at a time, until the new way of standing in the world was the only way he knew. So let the bed take all of your weight now. Let your hands lie open, let the wanting stay, and let the grip go, and let your breath grow slow and long and untroubled, like water that already knows it will reach the sea. Close your eyes. The power was never on a throne, and it was never locked in a vault. It was here the whole time, in the one who finally stopped reaching. It was always yours. Sleep now, and come back tomorrow, and let it sink one layer deeper.